So every time I turn on my TV, open my internet browser, or even check my Facebook feed, it's all of this negative campaign stuff from this election coming up. And, I'm sick of that. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about who you really should be voting for. Because I've got some opinions on this and I wanted to share it with you today. I have some reasoning behind it. First of all, please keep in mind that when we're voting, we can do this a couple of different ways. We can look at what best serves our own interest, as in, who we like and what we feel like is good for us. Or we could look at what we feel like is the right thing to do. And to do this, you may have to do a little research. I've done the research. I've been doing the research for a very long time. And I've made up my mind on who I will be voting for. The other thing is, when we vote, we're not voting for anybody that these people are associated with. We're voting for the nominee. Don't confuse the nominee with people associated with the nominee. That can be dangerous. So with that in mind, here are my picks for the 2017 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. First of all, we have ELO. Now look no further than someone who should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than ELO. I'm not talking about Jeff Lynne and all the roots rock stuff he did in the producing he did in the 80s and the 90s and even today. I'm talking about ELO as a band. They brought strings in. They brought synths in. They were trying to pick up where the Beatles left off progressively. And I'm voting progressive, by the way. All of my votes are going to progressive artists. They did rock. They did pop. They did progressive. They did disco. A lot of people forget the Discovery album, but they did disco. Next we have Chic. And a lot of people say, what are you talking about? No. Chic, not Bernard Edwards, the late Bernard Edwards, not Nile Rodgers, who's still doing amazing things in production and has influenced music for the last 40 years. I'm talking about the band Chic. This was disco, but it was funk. But it was kind of rock. There was a lot of guitar in it. Had a great groove. And when the Sugar Hill Gang did Rapper's Delight, which most people will agree was the first big hip-hop song, who did they bite? Chic and Good Times. Yes, oh my gosh, yes did progressive rock. They were like Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young on a wicked acid trip. So it was psychedelic stuff, a lot of cool harmonies, a lot of weirdo stuff, long epic tracks, very 60s and 70s kind of vibe with rock and roll. And then they disappeared for a while and came back in 1983. Now, a lot of artists did this. ZZ Top did it and did it successfully. And then bands like Slade did it, didn't do like a great job. Although I did like what they did. They didn't give us anything brand new and wow. Now, between ZZ Top and Yes, I will say Yes gave me the biggest wow moment because they released the 90125 album with Owner of a Lonely Heart on it. Now, that whole album front to back is really good. And if I remember my music history correctly, the outtakes from that session went into the Art of Noise Into Battle album, which was like beatbox, and that influences electro and hip-hop and freestyle or whatever you want to call it. Cool stuff. So I choose them. Kraftwerk, the first synth band, the first time we really heard computers making music, and they influenced everyone. Absolutely everyone. Giorgio Moroder, they influenced Barry Gibb. They also influenced hip-hop, they influenced electro, tons and tons of stuff. So Kraftwerk. The Cars, the debut album from The Cars. Wow, I'd never heard anything like that when I heard it for the first time. It wasn't really what you would classify as rock. It definitely wasn't punk. It was what we called new wave. Now when we look back on it, this is a classic rock album. But at the time, this was like the first new wave album that most people had ever heard. The hooks were relatively simple, like punk. The songs were a little longer, but they brought in synthesizers on this, and there was like an empty void that was cool. Like the silences in that music was actually really cool. The pauses were great. That whole album front to back is amazing, and it influenced tons of stuff. All the synth pop stuff that you heard all through the 80s and the 90s and even today, a lot of the dance stuff, huge influence on rock and roll. So there are some of my reasonings on some of the people that I'm voting for in the 2017 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I wasn't going to talk about the presidential election. Are you nuts? So if you like this video, share it with friends and have your own debate and maybe freak them out with the title. I think it's kind of fun. So anyway, there you go. I got to do a Disc Jockey news broadcast now, so I got to go. But thanks for watching. Practice and enjoy.